So we're going to look a bit at what we're going to do in the future, where Orchestrator is heading. But we're also going to look at what we did this year and what our great development team actually achieved. So Orchestrator today basically got to a point where it manages the digital workforce. It's the tool to run your robots, to schedule your jobs, to have your processes in one place, but we're bringing it further. So what we did this year, and well, previously, we improved a lot the visibility and the traceability. So we have the ability now to see attended jobs in Orchestrator, which is great because you have a lot more visibility, a lot more control. You know when stuff is going in the bad way, hopefully never. It was also a feature that was requested by a lot of customers because we have a lot of people that are doing attended automation, you're doing front office automation, you want to have visibility over what happens basically. We're bringing full audit on actions because everyone loves that. You want to know, the people that hire you basically want to know when you do something wrong. No, I'm kidding. Obviously, it's actually very important for large companies because these companies are listed on different stock exchanges, for example, and they need to provide reports. And how they used to do it was taking like 100 screenshots per process. So I guess no one really likes to do that, do they? And well, one of the cool ones, Webhooks. Well, Webhooks is, we're going to talk a bit about what Webhooks is and how we are changing the paradigm. But basically, it's really good for integrations. And that's why Boris here loves us, basically. It's a big step forward in 18.4. We're becoming a lot more agile. So you'll now get to listen to events. That means that you'll find out quickly when a job finishes, when a new process version is added, when a queue item is added in a queue, for example. And how it works, basically, we have two ways of thinking about it today. So one is polling, like we used to do before 18.4. Polling is, you can think of it as my mother-in-law. She's the one that calls me like 40 times to ask, is it done? Is it done? Is it done? Are we there yet? Webhooks is, my girlfriend. She doesn't need to call me. She knows I'll call, because I'm afraid. At some point, I get somewhere, and she knows that call, I'll make the call. That's basically Webhooks. Webhooks is the girlfriend. You just wait by the phone, and it's going to come. I see some of you are married, so I see you resonate. Yeah. So this is kind of how it looks like. We're also building up on, maybe you've seen some pretty cool UI and UX now. You can choose the event, you can choose what you want to listen to, you can choose, you can have multiple webhooks, and it's one of the coolest things we did in 2018. We also made licensing more intuitive. We know it's not great yet, we're getting there. We're simplifying things, but basically, we brought concurrent runtime, which was great, because before 18.2, basically every time you created a robot, it consumed a license, no matter what it did. So we found out, obviously, that a lot of our customers don't like paying for robots that just stand around. So the concept here was more about the robot that was created, not the robot that was being used, performing anything. But after 2018.2, the machine now gets licensed, and basically you allocate a number of runtimes, and if a runtime is available, a job will start. We're also licensing Studio in Orchestrator, which is pretty cool, because you don't have to go through the manual process anymore. So kudos to our development team for that. But host licensing. Host licensing gives you a lot of things you can do now, a lot of possibilities. You can enable or disable a tenant directly from the host. You have the options now of licensing the tenant directly from within the tenant, or you can license the tenant from within the host. What that means is you can actually override the license allocation from the host. And it's really important, for example, if you're a partner that's managing several clients, or for example, if you want to have someone that, and I hope that your host is only accessible by the IT admins and no one has the password besides that. But you know, it's, you can override the license from there, and you can, for each tenant, as you can see, you can allocate the licenses. You have there the total, you have everything, but you can also remove the license that was previously allocated and do a new allocation. You can also now toggle the machine on and off, and this is especially only for licensing purposes. So we brought this concept of machines in 2018. Now you can add the machines in Orchestrator. You can see and easily, or hopefully easier, manage your infrastructure directly from Orchestrator. So a problem we had, and a few people asked, and we're listening to people on the forum, we're listening to clients, we're listening to everyone, or we're trying to. What people asked us was, why can I turn off my machine for licensing purposes? I don't need to go there and get the license of the machine. I should have a simple button. And basically that's what we did. It's a simple button. Well, it took 3 months to write the code, but it's a simple button now. So you can also see a lot of other cool stuff. So you can see how many runtimes you have allocated, how many robots you have on that machine, and how many are used at the same time. You can also see what the license status is, and we have some pretty cool colors there, basically red and green. We're trying to make it easier for infrastructure people basically to manage the whole RPA experience and to be able to get to a point where this is not going to be a headache. And let's talk a bit about headaches, actually. Attended robot decoupling was one of them, because let's imagine a hot seat scenario or a non-persistent VDI scenario where you have 1,000 people that are working on 1,000 workstations, and well, the fact is they can move around every day and they can sit at another computer. Well, in order to do that, basically before we did this, you needed to provision all the possibilities. And if you have just 1,000 people, which it's not a lot because we're aiming to get to a point where RPA becomes the thing and mainstream, so you don't have to do the boring things anymore, basically, and I'm hoping for that as well. But when we get there, before we get there, you had to provision 1 million combinations for 1,000 people. And obviously, no one liked that. So we got to a point where, at least for attended automation, it's easier to manage the infrastructure because you only provision a machine group, and then you just allocate the machine group to all the robots. We're also showing now the installed robot version in Orchestrator, and we're actually doing that because of what Radu also showed you. We want to get to a point in 2019 where we will be able to upgrade the robots directly from Orchestrator. To do that, we have a page, the machines page, where you can actually see the type of the machine. So it's either standard or template, template being the more general one that you only create for a group of machines and robots. And then we have the installed version, and we have there some possibilities ranging from unknown, when basically the robot never connected to Orchestrator before, having no robots installed, or having the version directly there. So you can imagine, if you have 100 machines and you want to upgrade all the robots that are installed, you can easily go to this page and say, oh, I just missed the last 10. So we're trying to make everything easier for you and for the infrastructure people. And we also have a lot of cool new stuff. Radu has been talking a bit about libraries and reusable components. And so basically, we're aiming a lot on reusability, because we don't want the RPA developers to get to a point where they have to rewrite the same thing or just copy-paste code. We want to get to a point, and we already did, where you can drag and drop a library, it becomes an activity, and then you can easily use it. The input parameters from the library itself become input parameters for the activity, so everything becomes easy. The idea is that these are also very easy to share in a company, within the company itself, or also obviously on the marketplace, because that's why we did that. It's easy to upload them, it's easy to download them from the marketplace internally, and so on. We're also bringing, and we also brought that, SAML 2.0 support and the smart card. So a lot of companies, and especially financial institutions, or for example, a lot of federal agency in the US, well, it's a shutdown now, so no one really cares about this, but a lot of these agencies have smart cards. And you need to have a card to log into your computer, which must be really good coming to work and having to have another card besides a password. But lots of people use that. And XAML is basically just what we want to bring to have the possibility for companies to bring on their own third parties, authentication providers like Okta, like I don't know, a lot of other names. And basically, we brought XAML 2.0. We're also bringing some other protocols, but some of that to follow. Job queues per environment. This is one of the operational things that should make your life easier. Because, well, what you can see on the left-hand side was what we had in the past. So, when you created a job, you had to allocate robots. So, for example, if you, probably most of you know, hopefully, that when you allocate a job to a robot, it can only perform it twice. So, once it's running, and the other one is going to be pending. Now, what we thought was, why would you care who are the robots? What's the name of the robot and what's the machine and all that, instead of just saying, I want to allocate it to the available robots and run it for a number of times, which obviously makes it a lot easier. So you don't have to worry anymore about what are the available robots or how many times you can run it. And basically, we queue all the jobs now per environment. So you can put there 1,000 jobs, which wasn't possible before. And whenever a robot is free, it's going to start executing it. The job input-output arguments, we basically did this in combination or cooperation with Studio. So any input or output arguments that you created in Studio before, you can now actually modify in Orchestrator. So we basically made them better. It's easier to use. So. Thank you for that. Radu won't appreciate it, but he had his claps. So there are multiple levels here. You can have them inherited at package level. So you upload them from Studio to Orchestrator, and you never modify it. That's the default that you have set in Studio. You can set them as process level. So once you go from package to process, you can set them up again and change them and modify them. Basically, wherever it says inherited, they're the default values that were set at different levels. But you can also set them as job level or at schedule level. So maybe you want to run a process that's very, you want to schedule a process. It's very particular for 1 day, for example, and you can, or for a week, and you can just schedule it with running it with some arguments that you choose. Well, tomorrow and 2019 moving forward, Orchestrator is going to augment the digital worker. So we're moving away from being a tool where you see robots and machines and all that, but we're moving to a future where business people can work with Orchestrator. Where we don't have to have 3, 4, 5 years of technical studies and knowledge and all that, but you can just use parts of it easily without having to go through all the hassle. Let's see how we do that, actually. Well, come on. So we're taking reusability further. The libraries, we're doing libraries per tenant. So at the moment, the libraries are only at host level. So they're shared within an organization, an Orchestrator instance. But you're going to have the possibility to upload library at tenant level and basically segregate the data. And you'll have the possibility to not share it with your colleagues, mainly, which makes it really cool. Data. Everyone mines their data. Data is becoming the 21st century mistress. You need to keep it secret, especially from the other departments. If you ask HR, wherever you go into an organization, if you ask HR, their data is top secret. Doesn't matter. Everything is top secret. That's why we're doing this, basically, because we want to get to a point where you have multiple tenants. You can map your organization to tenants, departments, and so on. But you have dedicated databases. So you don't have users that can see what's happening in other tenants. You don't have data that's shared. And for example, you have an IT admin that can see data from that's sensitive. And it's very good because we want to make sure that security is top of our list. And it's very important for us to get to a point where the companies feel safe and you guys feel safe about using UiPath and using Orchestrator and data sharing and all that. And obviously the stock exchanges want to feel safe that's happening as well. So it's easier for companies for compliance reports from a security perspective. Troubleshooting, that's another hot topic. We're actually going to have quite a cool feature coming up quite soon. I'm not going to say exactly the date. It may be April, I don't know. Basically, the question is, what happens when a job fails? And the answer right now is no one knows. Is the process malfunctioning? Did the UI change? Is there a button there that wasn't there before? Did the app that is running returned an error? But now you have no idea. But what we want to do, and what we're doing actually, is a feature where you can have screenshots, for example, or you can have a very short movie when a job fails. You can see a very short summary and say, hey, I spotted the error in 1 second instead of going on and investigating, for example, for several hours, days, and so on. Extensions and plugins. We're bringing that to Orchestrator because, well, everyone wants to use their own toys, basically. We have companies that are paying, and you guys have different solutions that you like, different vendors that you're comfortable with. Obviously, most of them cannot be used right now with Orchestrator, although it might make sense. So, because a lot of companies are paying for third-party solutions that go well with RPA, we want to start allowing them the possibility to easily integrate. So, building a framework where we can easily put in, for example, a credential storage, a more different ones, more advanced ones, more advanced features as well. And for example, we're kind of hinting here at CyberArk. But also, adding other vendors for other use cases, like blob storage, for example, or storing queue items in a separate storage and stuff like that. So it's going to be exciting. We're also going to offer some insights into what you could do and give you some ideas. And it's still going to be around also that a solution that is secure and that's compliant and so on. Robot health and status, and you look at your robots, you go to your robots page and you wonder, how are my robots performing? I just created 10 robots and I had 100 jobs they run today. How well did they do? So, for example, how many jobs per day, or how many robots are disconnected throughout the day, or how many queue items have been processed. And there's no way to tell that right now. There's a way to tell it through Kibana, more or less, or through other BI tools that we're integrating with, but there's no easy way to, for example, forward a link to someone from the business forwards you a link and says, I think this goes wrong. And that's why we're doing monitoring, and that's why we're going to do analytics as well and reporting, because we want you to have control over what RPA does in your organization. So we want you to be able to say, hey, this week we processed many more queue items than last week. Maybe we're doing something better, and I hope that's the case always, is not the other way around. We're also bringing a schedules calendar, which is going to be pretty cool from a UX standpoint. The idea here is, you're in front of your computer and you want to schedule a job, and the main question is, when can you schedule it? When are your robots not running right now? The answer, obviously, is no one knows. What a lot of people do, and we're sorry about that, they need to use Excel to do this. And if you have 600 jobs that are scheduled to run in a week, it's not that easy to find a spot. We tried, actually, just for the fun of it, and it took like an hour or something. So the idea is you want to easily see, you can think, for example, of, Google Calendar, for example, or, other calendars or stuff like that. You can think, that you want something that's easy to spot and easy to see, I want to select a robot or a group of robots, and I want to know when I can run something on them, basically. Never miss business deadlines. SLA-based scheduling. So the idea here is, we're thinking, right now with RPA, we're kind of doing a lot of things still manually, like scheduling jobs, like looking at our queue items, looking what's happening there. But we're wondering, like, what if one day, we won't need to create the schedules and the jobs and the robots and to think about all this. But, we'll get to a point where, for example, Orchestrator can detect if a new queue item has been added to a queue and then start a job automatically to process it. Or, for example, what if you could, input the date and the time and tell Orchestrator that I want all queue items to be processed by that time. Well, obviously, the question is now, how many robots do you need? But what we're planning to do is, you won't even need to care about that because Orchestrator will be able to do the math for you. Even better infrastructure management, that's what we're hoping for. We're bringing unattended robot decoupling to Orchestrator as well. So we're moving from having attended robot decoupling only for the front office automation to also having it on the server. So you don't need to worry anymore about machine names, about robot names, who runs what, users, and so on. But we're also bringing, like Radu said, the possibility to upgrade the robot directly from Orchestrator. And maintenance mode. So maintenance mode is basically the question, if you're the guy that needs to update Orchestrator, which hopefully is a great job, and at some point, you wonder if you can update because you have another 100 jobs starting in 2 hours, and you're not sure if these jobs are going to be finished. And if these jobs are processes that are paying invoices, you won't want to have a problem with that. So the idea here would be that we're bringing a way for you to stop everything, to put it on pause, and basically update seamlessly without having any problems, without having any interruptions, or having to basically go to finance and say what went wrong. Process-based grouping. Containers is the feature, we hope, of the year, one of them, obviously. It brings a lot of cool stuff. So you can think of containers as the next level organization units. Containers would be a lot more robust. You can decide between what you're sharing in an organization unit, what you're sharing in a container. It's going to be on multiple levels, so we're not sticking to the single level organization unit, so it's going to be easier to map to different businesses, different departments, and so on. It's going to also allow us to do resource-based security. So you can create multiple containers. You can basically have individual access to entities and resources in Orchestrator. So a lot of it is around segregation, but also a lot in control. And it's also a big step forward to having, for example, front office automation done at the next level, where you don't have to have 200 processes in the robot. You can have just the 2 that you're interested in. But it's going to be a lot easier to map these. Come on. And the Process Hub. Process Hub is, well, right now, the process page and the package page and all that is, well, to be fair, kind of a mess. And we want to do a lot more there. And we know, it's working fine, obviously, but we want to make it easier for everyone to understand it and to use it in a bit different way. So one thing we're bringing is an approval system. So basically, whenever you'll upload a package in Orchestrator, you can choose to have an approver. And this is also really important for corporate governance perspective. But we also bring documentation per process, because we've been talking to a lot of companies. And when you get into RPA, it seems easy. You have 10 processes. You go to HR. You go to finance. You've been hearing all these cool guys from UiPath telling you, these are some of the easier processes to automate. But at some point, people that did the automations, for example, may leave the company, or the processes may change. What happens then is, you need to have some kind of documentation per process, and you need to have this documentation readily accessible for everyone, so you don't have to go through a lot of internal resources and all that. So we're bringing the possibility to have this documentation directly in Orchestrator. But another cool thing we're bringing, actually, and I left it at last, with the processes is the possibility to associate assets with queues and with processes. So basically, you'll be able to move processes around really easily, or, for example, with something that everyone wants, start a job to process a queue. So you don't have to go through the complex workflow that you need to have today. And obviously, because it's 2019, we're bringing Orchestrator Mobile, because everything is on the go now. So we want to have everything available on mobile, to have it your mobile phone. You can actually use your mobile phone for other things than Facebook and Instagram, and this is big. So at a glance, you can see what your robots are doing. You can see queue items that have failed. You can see everything. So we want to be able to control 100,000 robots by the use of a phone. And this is going to be also really, really big. And the first version, actually, is going to be announced in a few days. So keep looking at our website, at our announcements, because this is coming. I'm not sure why the next slide is black, though. I've heard you change your logo, so I want to thank you all, and thank you for your contribution. Just before I leave, I just want to ask for a favor, because this is broadcasted throughout UiPath, throughout the world, and it's not me who did all these cool things, it's the developers back home. So can everyone stand up and do the clapping in front of the camera there, and not in my face? Because these are the people who worked